And that is a straight lie. It's already in place in Queensland. If you want a job in the mining sector, you have to get with the state government and provide them a digital ID so that when you do your medical and you pass and declared fit so you can sign up with your employer, you must provide a digital ID to get the medical results to get your job. So if you want a job in the coal sector, in the mining sector in Queensland, you must have a digital ID. So the federal government, and that was at a time when the state government was Labor. So the federal Labor government passed the digital ID, thanks to the bloody Liberal Morrison's Liberal National government bringing it into the parliament. So digital ID is already here. There are many things you can do.
There he is.
G'day, Adrian.
Hey, Malcolm. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Amazing. Thank you. It's great to talk to you again. It's always a pleasure having you on the show.
Same here. And I'm sorry that we had to postpone it last time. It's taken a long while.
Yeah, don't be sorry, mate. I mean, life happens. Everyone's busy trying to do their bit in the world. So I'm very forgiving of all of those things. And yeah, you've got nothing to apologize for, mate. I appreciate the fact that you make some time. Everyone should know that you're not getting paid for this. I'm not getting paid for this. This is a donation of time and resources and knowledge. You know what I mean, for the greater good, as a run into the ground comment that is. I think we're trying to do the best that we can to improve ourselves and our future, right?
Exactly. And the most important thing is accurate information being shared with people, and the mouthpiece media, the fake news media, the globalist big brother media has shown that it's sabotaging our country. Generally, not all of them, but most of them. The second category of media, the anti-social media, Facebook, Instagram, doing the same and throttling people like yourself. And the most important part of the new media, the real media, is the independent people's media, which is pushing truth and discussion. So, and we're facing a lot of challenges coming up with the misinformation and disinformation bill that the Greens and Labor are setting up for reintroducing into the Senate, remembering that the Liberals introduced it in the first place.
Yeah, sure.
And we're the only party that opposed it strongly, and we got together with the people, and the people are the key to stopping this kind of censorship bill, because it was the people who put pressure on Labor and Liberal, the uni party, that scuttled it last time, and we've got to make sure the people are on board. So spread the word about the misinformation and disinformation bill, or keep spreading the word and keep spreading the truth generally.
Yeah, that's right. Where would we be without independent media and podcasting and things like that? We'd just be, in a world of trouble, I would imagine. But let's talk to this, Malcolm, because it's super concerning. I know when I first approached you about this, it was some time ago when they announced that this digital ID and the disinformation bill was coming about, and then, like you said, like you guys, strongly opposed it. It's sort of I don't know, like deteriorated a little bit. It kind of slowed down in terms of progress, but here we are. We're right back in the throes of it, under the guise of our safety and making sure that everyone is knowing the truth and not getting fed lies and things like that. But unfortunately, your industry, being the government and also media, as we already talked about, seem to be the biggest proponents of mis and mal and disinformation.
Well said, very well said, mate. The government, I've put in a submission to the inquiry, the Senate inquiry the select inquiry on information integrity on climate change and energy, and it's been set up to try and nobble the climate skeptics, the climate realists who are telling the truth on climate and energy. And that's what it's been done to do. So I put in a submission. It's about 100 pages long. And I one of my conclusions is that the government is the biggest purveyor of misinformation, disinformation. But it's important to build on what you were saying. It's not just a misinformation and disinformation bill, and let's call that for what it is. It's a censorship bill. They
Sure.
want to shut down any opposition. That's all it is. It's a censorship bill. And so what you also, I wrote down several points as you were talking. There's a suite of 5 of these bills. There's the misinformation, disinformation bill, which has been, which will be brought back, I'm sure, by the Labor Party and the Liberal Party. And the Greens will support it. There's the digital ID bill, which we'll talk more about it, which requires people to have a digital ID for access to various services. They're not saying that, but that's what it will do. It'll share your information all over the world. It'll make you open to hacking, and it'll take information across many different areas and put them into a conglomeration, which if a hacker gets in, then you're gone. And also your data will be shared with corporations and sold to corporations who will store it in other countries away from our privacy laws. Then there's the identity verification bill, which means using biometric data. There's the under 16 ban on using social media and even search engines like Google. And so the purpose of that is to make sure that if you want to look at a site that's open to adults, and I'm not talking about porn, I'm talking about not shut down to under 16 people, then you will have to expose your digital ID. You'll have to expose your identity. And that it'll also send the under 16s into the dark spaces of the internet to get access. And then there's a digital currency, which the Reserve Bank, under my questioning, has admitted that they're researching, and it'll be tied to a global digital currency. So what they've got is the means of controlling everything. So based upon what you say, it'll determine your access to cash, food, etc. So that's really serious. And the second part of that bill, so it's really about controlling every aspect of your life and making sure you don't challenge the government, the biggest purveyors of misinformation and disinformation. Yeah. Now, the second part of that is it's Labor and Liberal. It's a uni-party deal, and the Greens are in on it as well. So that there's no doubt about that. Most of those concepts were introduced by Scott Morrison with the LNP, and then the Labor Party has brought them back and introduced them. The other point I made was something you said. It'll all be sold as good for your safety, protect your safety. It'll be done based on 2 things: fear of some imminent, catastrophic, horrendous future, or convenience, and you'll be lulled into it. The other thing is, it's not just the uni party in this country, Liberal and Labor. It's also global. It's all the red and blue in each country. Britain, red and blue. Red is Labor, and blue is the Tories. In America, it's red and blue, Republicans and Democrats. Fortunately, Trump is not a true Republican, and he's standing in the way of this globally. In New Zealand, it's the National Party who are blue and the Labor Party who's red. In Canada, it's the Liberals who are socialist, and they're red, I think, and blue is the Conservative Party. Mm-hmm. So it's red and blue. They pretend to have a difference of opinion, but they're not. They're both identical, and they're both uni-party. So it's the small independent parties that are standing in the way of this, and people like myself and Pauline Hanson, and Tyrone Whitten, and now Sean Bell is about to be brought into the Senate in New South Wales with One Nation.
Yeah, look, there's a lot to touch on there. So let's talk to the argument that there is a benefit to having a digital ID because of the high probability that your identity can be stolen. We live in a world of deep fake. We live in a world of AI now. I mean, you and I, we can be our images, our voice can be cloned. Like there's evidence now of even on a very small scale, like it's not as egregious as what I think the digital ID will morph into. But for example, like Joe Rogan talks about, there's ads going around with him spruiking some sort of supplement, but it's not him. He doesn't back or endorse or anything like that of any of those companies. But they're running ads against him saying that this product is good, and they're making money. So again, I've had this conversation really recently with my brother, And the argument is like, well, we live in a world where ID can be stolen. So isn't a digital ID a good thing? Shouldn't we be moving towards something that can protect our identity?
Well, you raise some really important points, and it's important to understand. I'm opposed to the digital identity bill because it gives government complete power. That's what I'm opposed to. I'm not opposed to digital ID, but if you want a digital ID, that's your choice. There are a number of benefits to having a digital ID, providing you contract with someone to provide that service.
Mm,
So digital ID does many things. It brings in convenience. It makes it easier and quicker to endorse something. When I say endorse something, to sign up for something, because instead of taking your papers in, your birth certificate, your driver's license, and taking them in physically or mailing copies of them, you can just jump online and do it. But it must be your choice as to who you use to provide that service, not the government forcing you to do it.
mm,
So if you don't want to do it, that's fine. That's your choice because of the risks of hacking. If you want to do it, that's fine, but you do it with provider A or provider B or corporation C that provides a service for digital ID. When you have that choice, it forces the people who are competing to get your business. You'd pay them a fee for digital ID. It forces them to make sure they tighten up security and they tighten up ease of use. With the two major corruptors of data, the two major groups that are vulnerable to hacking are Facebook, Instagram, the social media, Meta, basically,
yeah.
the what do they call them? The global tech companies, right?
Mhm.
They're vulnerable. And the second organization that's most vulnerable is the government in many countries. Now,
Mm,
and the biggest thing to remember is breaches of digital security are largely due to human error. So what we've got to do is make sure that we select a provider, and that way they will have to make sure they maximize security and maximize ease and convenience and minimize price. So I've got no problem with the digital ID, providing it's your choice and providing it's not the government which uses it to control. So digital ID can make it easy, but when you get choice, as you know, Adrian, when you get choice, you get accountability, because if someone stuffs up, you just move to their competitor. But with the government, there's no choice and there's no accountability. We know that from the way they run the bloody country. They run it into the ground over the last 70 years since the
yep.
UN was formed to do exactly that. They're putting in place these bills, the five that I just mentioned, the suite of five bills. They're global initiatives. We've got the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, per, marketing a brochure for global misinformation, disinformation bills. They want to shut down debate on climate. Not that they've ever had a debate on climate. They want to shut down debate on the big pharma. They want to shut down debate on stealing of property rights, which was perpetrated in this country by the Liberal National Party under John Howard's government. So there are many things that they're pushing with their global agenda that they want to control, and they want to show. See, it's hard to stop here because
Mm,
um, we're pushing. We're not pushing, but the Liberal Labor Uni Party and the Greens have been pushing a global agenda for a long time. Global agenda, and the people have never been asked to vote whether or not they agree with it. They've never been asked for their opinion. It's never been put on as a platform for the people to choose at an election. So
mm,
they're doing it by subversion. Most of the MPs in the Labor Party and Liberal Party are not aware of what I'm talking about. They're not aware of it. They're just blindly going along and supporting it. And it's very important to understand two things. First of all, the UN, the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum have no authority over any Australian, none whatsoever. The only way they can have that authority is by the Parliament passing bills in line with the UN agenda, and that's what's been happening.
mm,
What was this? The second thing is that um, it's never been exposed to the people. The people are the supreme entity in our constitution, in our democracy, and we're essentially a republic now. We are not a monarchy. We're a constitutional monarchy, which means the top of the tree is the constitution. That means we're a republic. It's a nation ruled by law. In our constitution, the monarchy has a substantial role, but it's in reserve powers. It doesn't have any power. In a let's start from scratch. If we have a monarchy, then it means the king or queen rules the country, has absolute power.
Hmm.
In a constitutional monarchy, the king or queen serve the constitution, have limited powers. And that's better than a presidency, because instead of electing some retired old political hack open to corruption, we've got an independent monarchy, and they've done a bloody good job. I used to be opposed to the monarchy because I didn't like things being handed down by birth.
Hmm.
But I am now absolutely convinced that we have got the best setup in the world. We've got the best of the Americans and the best of the British.
Really?
And the British is the oldest representative democracy in the world, continuous. And we have got a fabulous system. Where we fall down is that I've just said the people are the top of the sovereignty in this country. But a true democracy requires being active. Means when you vote in an election, you understand the alternative candidates, what they stand for, their values, their principles, their strength of character or lack of. So you understand that, and you vote according to the best candidate. What's happening in our country, and then in between elections, and that's not the end of it. It's not just about educating and informing yourself and then voting in accordance with what you think is best. In between elections, you stand up and you put your MPs under pressure. You hold them accountable for, and you tell them what's required. I serve the people of Queensland and Australia. I've got to use these things, and Pauline demonstrates that really well, and I hope I do too. I try to. And then we speak up, not for our benefit, we speak up for the benefit of our constituencies. A representative parliamentary democracy is an assembly of representatives who are supposed to be speaking on behalf of what the people want and need. That's what it is. Even the people who we are opposed to, we should be speaking up for them. So that means that the people of Australia should be holding their MPs accountable in between elections, visiting their offices, demanding that they speak in Parliament about what the people want. It's not the politicians who run this country, it's the people who run this country. That's the way it should be. But what's
Mm.
happened is, instead of having active constituents, active members of the democracy, active citizens, we've got passive people. And the governments know that, both Labor and Liberal, and they speak bullshit at an election campaign to get your vote, and then they con you and put in place UN policies. And the majority of them do not even know it's happening. So what we've got to do is get back to being an active democracy, because a passive democracy falls into apathy, which is where we're at now. The people are taken for granted, and the people are serving, in effect, the government, whereas the government should be serving the people. And then apathy slides into tyranny, and that's what we've got. Morrison showed that he was a tyrant. Albanese has got a majority in the lower house, the House of Reps, and he's got, combined with the Greens, a majority in the Senate. So he can get through whatever he wants, providing he satisfies the Greens. So the Greens have got enormous power in this communist shit show that we've got going on at the moment. They're nobbling the staff that we have. They're gutting our staff. They're giving the Greens a party room worth $800,000 after renovations. But meanwhile, they're cutting our staff. We've got Jackie Lambie with 3 personal advisors, parliamentary advisors. We've got Tammy Tyrrell, David Pocock, Lydia Thorpe, with 2 each, which is what we had. We've been cut back to one each.
Wow.
The One Nation senators. Ralph Babette's been cut back to 1. Fatima Payman has none because she dared go against the Labor Party. I don't like what Fatima does, but she's got none. So how is that fair? So we've got Albanese pushing a dictatorship, and it's a communist dictatorship. So we can talk about any aspect there
Yeah.
that you want.
Look, I'll tell you, I am, the most politically disillusioned, that I ever have been in my entire life. I am so disgruntled and fed up with politics. I applaud people like yourself because you say the things that that resonate with my deepest core values, but
Well,
the
hopefully you can
whole
see us
sort of,
doing those things, because we don't just talk.
yeah, well, absolutely. But at the same time, the you judge a person by their actions, what they do, and not what they say, right? So
Yep.
I put you in the camp of someone who puts his money where his mouth is and acts on it. My, I guess, disillusion with the way that this country has been run for some time, and I've been in business for 23 years, so I've always been disgruntled about how much money is being ripped out of my pocket every time I try and earn a dollar. But it just seems to be getting worse and worse. When you touched on things like we've got this uni party, the people have the power. They don't realize that they're too passive. But if you say, for example, we had this referendum around the voice, they wasted what was it, $394 million. Um,
450,
yep, there you go,
450 million. It's,
450
it's
million
only it's only
dollars.
money, and it's only taxpayer money.
Absolutely. They
They
pissed it up
say.
the wall. Meanwhile,
Yep.
my business has been shut because we had 9 months of business closures during the COVID period. I got no handouts because I opened the business in 2020. I had no proof of income for the 2019, 2020 tax return. So I got absolutely fucked over. I had to fire 30
Yep.
staff. And they went on to benefits. I got $1,000 a week as a director, but my rent was $5,000 a month at 50% reduction in cost, which I have to pay back. My mortgage was put on hold and it was accruing interest, which I had to pay back. So, yeah, look, I'm fed up with the government. I'm fed up with the fact that they can put a referendum together. The people have spoken and in a resound no. And but we go ahead with this money wasting propaganda machine still to only have that there's a sneaky backdoor entry into the voice and the um that policy being brought in or yeah, it just seems to me, Malcolm, that even though the people are awakening, even though there are more and more people getting disgruntled, I think the sentiment I don't think I live in a vortex that is as big to say I'm only listening. I've got confirmation bias. I'm only listening to the people that are singing the same song as what I'm singing. I look around. I see people struggling. I've got people, homeless people are on the rise, and I've helped out the homeless people over the last 10 years. I mean, like, anyway, it's a big rant, but you understand what I'm getting at the moment. It just seems like the political system is rigged. I can even see minor
It
parties
is.
like yourself being strategically moved away, and you've just pointed out a minute ago that they're reducing your staff numbers and things like that. So I think they want to etch you out to the point where you have no real political sway in what you're doing. Is this all making sense to you, Malcolm?
It's making perfect sense. The only thing I disagree with you in that is that I don't think there are a lot of people awake yet. There are more and more becoming aware, but that people are so busy just trying to keep their nose above water level, and the water's rising
Sure.
that they're preoccupied with just survival. I wrote down a number of points as you were talking. People say, "Well, I'll ask you, what's the biggest purchase of your life?" In most
Yeah.
people's
The
lives,
home. Yeah.
yeah, straight away. That's what we're told. Bullshit. I disagree completely. There's one far bigger purchase that you make in your life. When you consider the taxes, fees, levies, rates, special fees, special taxes that you pay, the biggest purchase of your life, the biggest purchase of my life, the biggest purchase of most people's lives is government.
Hmm.
And then I say to you, are you getting value? And most people resoundingly say, no way. The second biggest purchase of most people's lives is housing. The third biggest purchase of most people's lives is a car. I think you'd agree with those three in that order. But
Agreed.
government is huge. Um, then when you look at it, the cost of government is taxes. And people are willing to pay taxes to get the services because as much as I think the government should stay the hell out of most aspects of people's life, you know, they do have to provide some services. And it's a matter of where they provide those services and who provides them. But things like defense, foreign affairs, trade, currency, distributing currency, not the way it's done at the moment because it's in the hands of the banks, the
Mhm.
globally owned banks. But see, there's so many topics we can touch on, but currency. So that's the federal government. The state government, in our constitution, the state governments are responsible for most of the government services, energy, water, infrastructure, roads, support from the government for various services, licensing, regulation, because some things have to be regulated, but minimal things. Now that's grown enormously. But what's happened to that, Adrian, although they're specified in the Constitution as being responsible at the state level, the central government has stolen them. Now, we took the idea of a federation from the Americans. If you look at the worst performing governments around the world, they're the ones with the central government, no states. That's it. They've got no competition. When you've got Labor and Liberal, for example, red and blue, and in most countries, then you've got no real competition because they're both pushing the same policies. So that's no accountability. When you've got a state government with the power to do most of the services and most of the regulation, then you've got competition. If New South Wales screws up, people leave New South Wales, they take their businesses, their small businesses with them, move to Queensland or Victoria. We've seen that in modern times in South Australia, where they trashed their electricity sector and people left South Australia to go to Queensland or New South Wales. There's so many examples we can use, but the point is that's the way you actually have a marketplace in government. And that's important to understand. So if you don't like the government in the state you're in, you can move to another state, and that's fairly easy to do in our country. I'm not one for saying we should have uniform laws across the country, because that doesn't lead to improvement. So the state governments are supposed to have the power to regulate and to provide services. And then what's happened, though, is that the federal government has taken more and more, just like in America. They've taken more and more of the power because they've got the funding, they've got the power of the purse. So they dictate to the state governments what's going to happen in each area. So this is the way it's structured at the moment. The money, through a high court ruling, which I certainly disagree with, in 1943, the state governments had the power to levy income tax in up to 1943. And then under the need for centralizing to get war funding, that was stolen by the federal government. So the states lost the power to raise income tax. They hadn't been raising income tax, but they lost the power to do it. If we had the states doing income tax and the federal government not getting the income tax, then the states would compete on efficiency, and we'd have a driving force to get lower rates of income tax. At the moment, there's no competition to the federal government. They raise income tax. So we had the power of money is in the federal government's hands. So they have the power to run our country. The states have the authority, but they have to put out the begging bowl to get money from Canberra, there's so many things you can talk about. But so that means the government's funding from the federal government goes to the states with conditions attached, with strings attached. So who's really running the states? It's the federal government. So we've got a single government running everything, and Labor and Liberal policies are almost identical. They're both in cahoots with the globalists. Yeah. And then we've got where the rubber hits the road. It's the local government. Actually, not a government. The local councils, the shire councils, the city councils. And they are the ones with the problem. So we've got the power in federal government. We've got the legislative ability, but it's controlled by the feds at the state level. And we've got the problems being addressed at the council level. So that's a recipe for never getting accountability. So we've got to set up. You would never run a country and never run a company like this.
Yeah, I agree.
And then governance becomes shoddy as a result of that lack of accountability. And we, at the moment, every major problem in our country comes out of that building in Canberra, Parliament House in Canberra, or the bureaucracy. Every major problem. And the few major problems that don't come out of there are worsened by Canberra having control. So right now, we've got many shire councils, city councils that depend on funding. Up to about 85% of their annual revenue comes from the federal government. And they come with conditions attached. So who's really running the remote shire councils in this state? It's the bloody federal government, who has no understanding of what's going on. So it's completely arse up. And that means that what's ending up in this country is the government, state, federal, and local should be serving the people. What's ending up happening is the people are serving the government. And the people have given up, many. Some because of COVID mismanagement are waking up. We've got native title, for example. As you pointed out, we had almost 70% of the population in Queensland said, go to hell with your voice. Go to hell. We had this is scary what I'm about to say next, every jurisdiction, every state, the Northern Territory, voted against the the voice referendum, voted against it because they could see the division. Many Aboriginals, and I would be guessing to say that the majority of Aboriginals, certainly the majority I've been talking with, are saying said no to the voice. Only one jurisdiction said yes to the voice. That was the Australian Capital Territory, Canberra. So they're completely out of touch. Native title, but even though the whole country said go to hell with your with your voice, now they're bringing in the treaty and so on
That's right.
through the back door at
And this
state
is what I
level.
mean, Malcolm. It's just like you can resoundingly say no as the people have the power, as you put before,
Yep.
but it's still a yes. It's like, that this is where like part of my rebellion or rebellious nature is to tell like every government to go fuck itself because I want my money back. Like when you said our biggest expense is government. Well,
Yep.
if you put the government and relabel it as any product or service, you would ask for a refund, right? You,
Without
you
a
would
doubt.
you would send it back. You would say, listen, you promised me an outcome and you never delivered. You would get a 1-star review on Google. Like there's just in no other context do we
You don't
suffer.
put up with it.
We don't
You
put
just
up with
walk
this
with your feet and go to another
anywhere
provider.
else. Okay, so I mean, I remember my first conversation with you 5 years ago in the midst of all of the
Oh, just
COVID.
another thing, just that I had a couple of points in there. I agree with your issue about we should be the richest country in the world, and per capita, we had the highest income of any country in the world about 120 years ago, at the time of our country's formation.
Yeah.
We're now falling and heading for 20. So that's the homeless in the richest country, what should be the richest country in the world, and the United Nations report said we have the most resources per person of any country in the world. We're the largest exporters of coal and natural gas in the world, the largest exporters of raw energy. Yet we can't use it here in this country to generate electricity. They're wanting to shut it down. So it's absolutely insane. And that's what's driving the homelessness crisis, apart from rampant immigration. When a government has an immigration policy, it should make sure that the number one people it looks after are the people who are already here. And they're
Mhm.
giving a big middle finger to the people who are here. They're not doing that at all. They're looking after their globalist mates, which we can talk about later. But the other thing is there's only been one serious competitor to the Uni Party, Liberal Labour Club. That's been One Nation. And when Pauline Hanson took off in the polls in 1998 with 23% of the vote, overnight, quarter of the votes, 11 MPs in state parliament in Queensland, the Liberal and Labor clubs, John Howard's federal government, Liberal national government, Peter Beattie's state government, colluded to put her in jail. They colluded to put her in jail. She's the first political prisoner in this country's history. She's the only one. The second thing they did was they got their Liberal Labor members to infiltrate One Nation's party branches and destroyed the party from within. They took on Beattie took on and destroyed the independent members of parliament who, once Pauline went to jail, were rudderless. So what was the other thing they did? Oh, that's right. They created lies and smeared Pauline and tarnished her so that people wouldn't vote for her. They called her a racist. How the hell can you be a racist when your party name is One Nation and you believe in giving everyone the same opportunities based on need, not on skin color? That's the very opposite of racism. But you can see what I'm saying. What they did was they pulled a number of dirty tricks. She was released, fortunately, from jail based on an appeal, which was valid. But they tried to destroy the only competition to the Uni Party. So now it's taken so long, but now we're starting to really rise in the polls, and people can see that that's the only alternative to the Labor Liberal Club. And more dyed-in-the-wool Labor people are saying, go to hell, we'll vote for One Nation. More dyed-in-the-wool Liberals are saying, go to hell, we'll vote for One Nation. So they're opposed to competition. They're opposed to you having a voice. They're opposed to you having a say. We've got native title now threatening more than 60% of Australia's landmass. And native title is based on a lie. It is based on a lie, which I'm happy to unpack for you if you want. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention those points to round off your previous comments.
Yeah. Well, look, let's talk to this because this podcast was spawned off the back of what solutions can we implement in to society and for ourselves, for our own health, for our own sovereignty, is to make this country a better place. Right now, the way that I see it is that there are a lot of Australians who feel like there is there's a point of no return. The government is helpless and hopeless. They're exiting. They're not
and
exiting their
dishonest.
state, Malcolm. They're yeah, dishonest. They're exiting the country. They're trying to
Yep.
flee to other countries to in order to have a better life because you mentioned before about expenses and things like that. Well, yeah, like my scenario right now is I'm looking for a new home to go and live in, to rent, by the way. I live in a sleepy town called Wollongong on the south coast of New South Wales, and I've got to pay $1,000 a week to house my family. Like
Fifty thousand a year. That's ridiculous.
it's $50,000 a year on rent. I've got three boys. I'm already paying $600 or $700 a week on food. So for me to get by, my gross income, needs to be 150 to $180,000 a year to get by. Like that's just allowing for the what ifs and the rainy days that I may need. My car might blow up or something might go wrong, and
Mm.
I need a bit extra cash.
And
So
how old are
what's
your
everyone
boys,
else doing? I
Adrian?
can't see everyone else on 150 to 180K,
How old are your
surviving in
boys?
this economy.
How old are your boys?
18, 15, and 13.
Okay, they need an adult at home, the two younger ones.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening. See, not only the consequences you tell, which are dire, but mothers now, or if you, well, it's up to the family to determine who wants to be the prime income earner and who's going to stay home. But kids need someone at home. That's the best place for one of the parents to be, without a doubt. But they have no choice. When I grew up, and I'm quite a bit older than you, when I grew up, that was the prevailing majority. Mothers stayed home. Sometimes a father stayed home, and the mother went to work if she made more money. But that was essential. We don't have that. So we have breakdown of the family, deliberate. We have
Mhm.
breakdown of family with family law, which came from the UN, deliberate. That was 50 years ago. We have breakdown of sexes. Well, you can't change sex, but now we've got children thinking they can.
Mhm.
That's a breakdown of family. Again, they're relentlessly crucifying families to smash families so that the government raises your children.
Yeah.
The government raises your children, and the government's curriculum are biased and incompetent. And where does the national curriculum come from? And who introduced the national curriculum? The national curriculum was introduced by John Howard's Liberal National Party government. And where does it come from? It comes from the UN, which is pushing a globalist agenda. So, so it's tough across every spectre because they're making it tough deliberately to smash families, smash private property rights, which John Howard's government stole from farmers and is now stealing from the government is now stealing from everyone. And we can discuss that if you want. But these are fundamental things. And a
Yeah.
communist to get communism in place, which is the UN's aim, global unelected socialist global governance, requires the death of family so that people rely on the government, the death of religion so that people don't have faith, and the stealing of property rights and the control of every aspect of your life. That is exactly what the UN is doing. They're trying to control your life directly and indirectly.
Mm.
And they're making a complete mess of people's lives, making a mess of our country because you didn't elect these policies.
No, we
You
didn't.
uh, you
And
opposed them.
Malcolm, look, let's go back to the solutions. I want to get your
Okay.
perspective on what you would do to change. What changes would you implement in this country if you could click your fingers and say, listen, this is what is going to put more money in people's pockets. It's going to free up some wealth. It's going to give you choices. It's going to improve your life and your lifestyle. Because, I mean, at the back of the the COVID debacle and all of these things, and we'll talk to all of that if you've got time, is like most people are far less healthy today than what they were 5 years ago. They're not eating well. They're not living well. They are definitely under a lot more stress, and because they took these injections, their health is compromised as well. But so
Yep.
let's go back. Um, like I've already pointed out, we're already paying a fortune for food, petrol, and living. But at the same time, even as a business owner, Malcolm, you know, look, my partner owns a restaurant, and the accountant will turn around and go, congratulations, you made profit this quarter. And then, by the way, here's your BAS bill, here's your GST, here's your taxes that you need to pay. And she'll turn around and go, well, where's the profit? Tell me, where am I making profit? Because I don't have, it's not sitting in my bank. All you're saying is, here's all of my taxes. I feel the same way in my business. It's just like you're working your freckle off to get ahead, but you're giving, like I heard a little while ago, is like you're working for 4 months or 5 months out of the year for free. And you're just
It's
giving that
worse than
straight
that.
back to the to the government. Like, it's not sustainable. This country, if I was to run this country like I'm running my business, um, I think it would be a great nation. But the thing is that this country is not being run like a business. It's been run by a fucking madman who just has no qualms about spending billions of dollars on this, that, and whatever, has no real context or concept of what reality actually is. He's a babbling buffoon. The guy can't speak right. He has no backbone, and is clearly controlled by all of these, three-letter agencies and bits and pieces around the world. So anyway, it's a long-winded question. I want to speak to solutions because I know the resounding uh, solution is the people have the power, but the people don't feel like they have power. They feel like if they stick their neck out, they get squashed. They feel like if they try and make a difference, it doesn't matter. The two-party system are in bed with each other, and everything just goes ahead. Uh, I don't know if you can sense
It,
like the frustration, but like this is why rebellion occurs. This is why civil discourse occurs. This is why people turn
yep.
to violence, because they're fucking frustrated, Malcolm. They don't know which way to turn other than with force.
Well, I agree with you. Frustrated, disappointed, fearful. They're afraid of their future. They're terrified of their kids not being able to afford a home. You can't afford a home, and there are no homes available for purchase because of the immigration levels. So rather than go on to that, you've said there's so many aspects of the problem we can discuss, but you want government solutions. We say, first of all, the people have to wake up and hold the government accountable, hold the opposition accountable. The opposition is not an opposition, but if you then start voting for minor parties and rising parties, like One Nation is the only party apart from the government which increased the number of MPs in the parliament last election. We're writing a massive increase in the polls, so people can see that something different is needed, and we're the alternative, the only alternative. So the first one is to exercise your rights in democracy. The second one is to exercise your rights in selecting media. Stop buying the fake media. Stop buying the fake news media. Follow the independent truth spreaders, the people's media. But now specifically, what can we do? Well, if you have a look at One Nation's policies, we tell people what we need. First of all, you use the phrase, I don't know if it's yours or if you stole it from us, but put more money in people's pockets. That was the governing phrase for our election campaign. We want to take $40 billion a year. We've identified more than $90 billion worth of waste in government. And there's much, much, much more. But
Mm.
we've identified and tagged $90 billion, costed it. All of our policies have been costed specifically. So take $40 billion of that wasted money and hand it back to the people. Give them an opportunity. When you get choice, you get accountability. So send it back to the people. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. The 90 billion, where is it going to come from? It's coming from $90 billion worth of saving of government waste, and it's much more than that. And what else would you do with the other 50? Well, we would spend $30 billion paying off the debt to reduce the interest payments. If we do not get hold of the interest payments and start paying off our debt, the interest payments are going to be the single biggest line item on the federal budget. The single biggest line item on the federal budget. Money's going to go overseas, does no good to us. And then the last $20 billion would be spent on infrastructure, improving the productive capacity of Australia, so that our children can have more money in their pockets in the future, because infrastructure is the greatest determinant of productivity. Infrastructure, perhaps reduced taxes are, but we need that infrastructure to look for the future income. So coming back to taxes, so that's reduce. So putting more money in people's pockets is reducing taxation. So some of the things that we want to do is reduce the cost of electricity by 20% by changing the national electricity market, which is really a national electricity racket. It's not a market at all. It's a racket, a bureaucratic racket. You don't have markets where the bureaucrats control who gets an access to to the provider, who gives favoritism to solar and wind over coal. We right now are gutting our electricity grid, making it unreliable, unstable, insecure, environmentally destructive, with favoring wind and solar, and there's no basis for it.
Yeah.
So we will cut the excise. We will cut the cost of electricity by 20% overnight by simply changing the rules for the national electricity racket. And what that will do is it'll reduce the costs of just about every business in the country, which will reduce the prices. So it goes against inflation. It starts reducing inflation. The other thing we would do is cut the fuel excise tax immediately. That's petrol and diesel. I've forgotten the figures on that, but we specified that in the federal election campaign to cut the cost of government taxes on fuel, petrol, and diesel. That would dramatically reduce the input costs to almost every business in the country. Every business, even service businesses, rely upon products that are trucked to them. And so that when we reduce the cost of fuel, we reduce the cost of trucking, we reduce the cost of transport, we reduce the input cost to every business in the country. We would specifically bring in income sharing so that if there's a stay-at-home partner, then the costs, the income tax is levied on the combined income divided by 2, the shared income. That would dramatically reduce income taxes paid by families with stay-at-home parents with a child at home, at least one child at home. It would put $10,000 more per year into the pockets of mums and dads across Australia. And then we've got many others there. Alcohol tax, alcohol excise for alcohol sold in pubs, clubs, restaurants, because that they're doing it really tough. Because what we've got at the moment is people, because of the excise tax in pubs, clubs, and restaurants being prohibitive, we've got people loading up before they go out, and then they don't buy much booze when they get out. So the businesses are going broke in the hospitality sector. So that would free up that. So the other thing we would do is cut the tax, eliminate GST on building materials, which would reduce the costing of houses. We would put a freeze on the National Building Code, which at the moment has been increased by about $50,000 impact per house because it incorporates NDIS. We have got to look after our disabled people, but you don't do that by putting $50,000 onto the cost of a house for everyone. There are very few disabled people, or there used to be, but now we're getting more and more. So looking at the costings, we would totally gut the Department of Climate and Energy, which would save $30 billion a year. More important, Adrian, it would free up your money to be on cheaper electricity and all this. It's all bullshit, this climate scam, net zero scam. And net zero, every major climate and energy policy has been introduced by the Liberal National Party, every one of them, starting with John Howard. And Labor comes in and ramps it up. So we would save about $15 billion by stopping the Aboriginal industry, and it is an Aboriginal industry. We would send the responsibility for that back to the states where it belongs under the Constitution. We have got an enormous Aboriginal industry where your money and my money in taxes is going to parasites in the middle, activists, lawyers, consultants, academics, and Aboriginal corporations that are just thieving this money, and it's not getting to the people in the communities. So we would replace that with a system of government grants that are based upon need, not on skin color, so that we have one nation. So we have not black nation and a white nation, but one nation, because a lot of what the UN is doing and through our government is sowing division, which sows disunity and lack of cohesion, which foments unrest. So there are others. There are other aspects of our policy on cutting $90 billion of government waste. We would we would we would control the pharmaceutical benefits scheme, the Medicare access, because right now many immigrants are coming into the country and getting whatever they want, and sending the bloody pharmaceutical benefits scheme, the pharmaceuticals that they get on the pharmaceutical benefits scheme, home to their parents, home to their family in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
So we would exit the United Nations. Now, I first mentioned that in 2016 in my first speech. And now it's one nation policy. We would exit the UN. We would exit the World Health Organization. We would have no control over us by the World Economic Forum. So that's basically what we do. But it only starts with active citizens getting involved in the democratic process, voting for one nation, and voting, and also then holding MPs accountable. So we would remove the controls over education by gutting the education department, sending all of that back to the states where it belongs. And then when you've got competition in the states, if a state comes up with a better curriculum, people will move to that state. Right now, the only competition to the state education system, which is nationally governed by the national curriculum, which comes from the UN basically, and the World Economic Forum, is homeschooling. And we've got almost a tripling of homeschooling in Queensland because of COVID. So COVID woke people up. The health department would be gutted federally and sent to the states, and the TGA, Therapeutic Goods Administration, would be gutted and made part of the health department. It can be done at the state level. We've talked about Aboriginal industry and energy. So
Now,
this is what we're saying. Send it
interrupt
back
for
to
a
the
second?
states.
Can I just interrupt for a second? Look, I like a lot of what you're saying, but I mean, um, with respect to transparency as to where this money is being spent, how much of that information do you have at your hand, and how much are we privy to as a nation? I mean, as a country. Like, I have a big problem with, like I said before, running this country similar to the way we are expected and enforced to run our businesses. So, at the end of every quarter, you've got a P&L statement which says exactly where you've spent all your money, and you have itemized accounts as to where this money is going. Like, how much of that is actually free information that we can at least get an understanding of where all this money is being spent? This $90
Well,
billion.
you've just hit the bullseye. The key to success in business, small business, large business, doesn't matter, is basing decisions on objective data. The federal governments under Labor and Liberal do not do that. They do not do that. They run our whole country, so quite often contradicting the real data, contradicting the real science, contradicting the real figures. And so that's the first step. And why do they get away with it? How do they make decisions? They make decisions on your money, and this is why taxes are so high in this country. They make decisions on how to spend your money based upon opinions, not data, opinions, or appealing to the majority of people who they can give benefits to. We've got 50% of the people getting benefits, getting more money from the federal government and state governments than they're putting into the state government.
Yeah.
When you get that kind of massive imbalance, then what happens is people say, well, screw this. Joe down the road is living a life of luxury on government money. Why should I work my gut out?
Of course.
And that's what happens. So it destroys initiative. But multinationals in this country are not being taxed. They're not being taxed. And the Liberal Party enabled that in 1953 with the dual nationality, I've forgotten what it was called. A legislation that basically said multinationals, foreign companies, do not have to pay company tax. The federal government under Bob Hawke, the Labor Party, made it very easy for the world's biggest tax evader and avoider, Chevron, to take our natural gas and send it overseas and pay virtually nothing for it. Nothing. The Norwegians and the people in Qatar levy huge revenue from the gas providers and gas and oil extractors. And the gas and oil extractors are still in Norway. They're still in Qatar, but they get money from the extractors. We get basically nothing.
Nothing.
So they're using our resources. So 90% of our foreign these figures are coming from a former deputy commissioner of taxation in Australia in charge of large companies and international matters. That was his title. He said that 90% of Australia's companies, large companies, are foreign owned and since 1953 have paid little or no company tax. Little or no company tax. So they're coming in here using our resources, extracting our resources for basically free, using our education system for talented employees, using our infrastructure, using our security forces, our defense forces to patrol their rigs in the Northwest Shelf. And we're getting nothing for it.
Mm.
And what they're doing by forcing you to be paying for it, you've got to pay huge rates of income tax, and then both partners have to work, and that destroys the family. So you see what they're doing. It is deliberate. When I first started researching this, I couldn't believe my eyes, but it's deliberate. And the World Economic Forum and the United Nations. So the key point is they do not make decisions based upon data. They make decisions based upon looking after the vested interests, looking after their mates, the big donors, which are basically the large union bosses and some large corporations. And many foreign corporations make donations. They're basically looking after BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, First State, who are the global wealth funds who control just about everything in this in this world, and they control. They control so many things directly, and they control through ownership. Our four banks: Westpac, NAB, ANZ, Commonwealth. And can you imagine the brazenness of NAB calling itself NAB?
Mm.
They want to nab you. I mean, that's how ridiculous it is. But anyway, they are owned in a controlling interest by BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, First State, and other global wealth funds. We don't have four banks competing. We have one bank with four logos, and they have the similar policies, similar products, similar services, similar strategies, and because they are one large corporation in essence. So that's what we've got going on in our country. And many large companies in this country are owned in a controlling sense by BlackRock, Vanguard, First State, State Street. And the governments look after them. The governments, both Labor and Liberal, pretend to have regulations to protect you from the banks, but they're protecting the banks from you. Mm-hmm. You try taking on a bank, you won't do it. So that's what's going on. And the control measures they're bringing in place make it easy for basically these large corporations to control you and to extract money from you. What's happening, Adrian, is that we're returning to feudalism, but returning to a digital feudalism where the control is through digital means, digital ID, misinformation, disinformation bill. So what they want to do is control every aspect of your life. So we had feudalism, where the property was owned entirely by the barons, who had enormous influence, including over the monarchy. They really ran many countries. And then we had the scientific revolution, which made objectivity and freedom the core traits, which then drove the industrial revolution and the huge, dramatic, unprecedented improvement in standards of living and reductions in cost of living, gave us choices as to how we spend our money. And you just look around, longevity increased, choices increased, how relaxation increased, comfort increased, safety increased, security increased, and so many other things. We had so much more choice. And that led to the middle class, which led to huge freedom. And the globalists now are opposing that. They want to give control back to the robber barons. And what they're slowly starting to do is increase the controls. And the insidious thing, Adrian, and this is why your job is so important. The insidious thing is that if I was sitting next to you and held a gun to your head, people can see that Malcolm is controlling Adrian. End of story. They can see that. And so they don't trust whatever you say. They don't trust whatever I say. But what's been going on with this latest return to digital feudalism and ownership feudalism is that the control is being exercised by indoctrination from when we're this big, where it's indoctrination. You don't even know I'm controlling you. Mm. And so it's insidious. And what's happening is people are slowly but surely getting drowned by the amount of work they've got to do just to keep their nose above water.
That's right.
So what we've got to do is support people like yourself, and that's why I'm here, supporting you so that you can get the word out, because we've got to get people to wake up, because the antidote for control is freedom, and we've got
Well,
to
look,
restore our
I
freedoms.
agree, but we live in an illusion of freedom. It's just it's a upper class slavery mechanism that's, seems to be controlling everything and everyone. Are you are you hearing any sort of reports out of Vietnam at the moment, how they're freezing bank accounts and implementing, if anyone who doesn't apply for the digital ID, they're freezing millions of bank accounts and things like that. It's um, starting to sound a lot like, if you don't get the jab, then we're going to do all of these things in order to coerce you to comply. Are you hearing any truth to any of that?
Yes, we are, and we're hearing similar kinds of things in other countries, or bits and pieces of the COVID experiment, the COVID fraud, the COVID mismanagement, the inhuman COVID mismanagement was about testing and trialing various aspects of a complete controlled society, and various countries are doing different things in that aspect. We've got 10 minutes, 15-minute cities in the UK actually in place. You cannot move more than 15 minutes from where you live for your work, for your shopping, for your entertainment. You cannot move more than 15 minutes. They want to destroy housing and create homelessness, so that people will end up moving into shoebox sizes, pack and stack in apartments rather than the house. A house, it uses less energy. A house is the cheapest form. A standalone house on the ground is the cheapest form and the cheapest form of housing, and the lowest cost in terms of energy, the greatest efficiency. So they're wanting to destroy that so they can control what you do. We're
Mm.
seeing so many aspects, and COVID was a test run for many things.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Do you see
mandates,
that
for
happening
example,
here
were
in
a test.
Australia? Because, like, in terms of digital ID, obviously this bill is getting a lot of attention. It's also getting a lot of support. So it looks like, with in the midst of One Nation not making a dent in putting a stop to it, it looks like it's going to show up in some sort of form. You've got the NAB, for example, you mentioned it before. I'm pretty sure I saw an article not too long ago where they're working towards their own CBDC, right? So already
Yep.
in
Commonwealth.
yeah, in the Commonwealth, so it's already happening, and in my mind, I'm trying to prepare myself for that situation. And so, as much as I don't like digital ID and digital currency, I see myself actively, I guess, becoming knowledgeable, investing in, looking at ways to exit the system as soon as I possibly can in a way that protects myself and my family. So I'm not sure if this is a question, but more of a sentiment and a statement as to where this country is heading. It seems like we're right at like the coalface of walking into a digital ID and this sort of, yeah, interweb of control over everything that we do. You can see it in the banking system. You can see it with MyGov, with everything that's been linked to everything else. Like, it just seems like Australia is walking into this digital prison, and I'm not sure what solutions that I can take, let alone everyday Aussies that, like you said, they're just working their freckle off. They're not even thinking about what they can do to mitigate some of these proposals that are on our doorstep.
Right. There are many things we can do. First of all, there's an error in what you're saying, in that the digital ID is coming. The digital ID has been passed. It was developed by the Liberals. It was enacted by the Labor Party. The digital ID legislation is in place. But the government, you'll be pleased to hear this, reassures us that it will not be compulsory. And that is a straight lie. It's already in place in Queensland. If you want a job in the mining sector, you have to get with the state government and provide them a digital ID, so that when you do your medical and you're passed and declared fit so you can sign up with your employer, you must provide a digital ID to get the medical results to get your job. So if you want a job in the coal sector, in the mining sector in Queensland, you must have a digital ID. So the federal government, and that was at a time when the state government was Labor. So the federal Labor government passed the digital ID, thanks to the bloody Morrison's Liberal National government bringing it into the parliament. So digital ID is already here. There are many things you can do. You've got to maintain choice. So the first thing is keep doing what you're doing. Independent people's media, keep spreading the news. Secondly, use cash wherever you can. We have my wife and I have a Visa card, which gives us Qantas points. Gives us, what do they call them? Frequent flyer points. Mm-hmm. Wonderful, wonderful. We get that benefit. We don't get that benefit. It's paid for at higher prices. But what we do now, we just say we don't use a Visa card unless it's absolutely essential. We go to the bank, which takes a little bit of time because they're shutting down ATMs, they're shutting down bank branches in rural areas, regional areas, and also in suburban areas and city areas. There are two Commonwealth Bank agencies, bank branches in the Brisbane City CBD. Two. One of them you can't get cash from. So that means you got one you can get cash from. And so they're shutting down the options for getting cash. But my wife and I go to the trouble of getting cash, putting it in our wallets, and buying everything with cash. And when we walk into a business, we say, do you take cash? No. Okay, well, I'll move somewhere else and get my coffee somewhere else or get my groceries somewhere else. So that's the first thing. Keep cash alive. The banks are trying to shut down cash because that's the only way they can bring in a central bank digital currency, which then they've got control. And I asked questions in Senate estimates hearings of the RBA, and they admitted to me that they have been doing research on a central bank digital currency and on a central bank digital currency tied to a global currency, global governance, global control. The other thing we can do, Adrian, is spread the word that we need to be very, very proud of our species. When I was, before I got into the Senate, I started researching this climate scam because I've been trained in geology, trained in atmospheric gases, trained in statistics. So I could understand what they were doing was crap. So I did the research to make sure, and it is complete crap. There's no basis for the climate scam, the climate narrative. There's no basis for the energy narrative. Yet they're destroying our country based upon on bullshit. Mm-hmm. So I did my research, and I was traveling around the country at my expense, along with other people, particularly older professors who had some freedom because they could say to their universities, "Go to hell, I'll tell the truth." The universities was silencing their professors who were speaking out against this climate rubbish, telling the truth. So anyway, Bob Carter was a prominent one. He died in 2016, but a wonderful, wonderful man, passionate about science, and he understood the importance of science for freedom as well as for material progress. And one day we were having a break, and Bob said to me, "This climate scam has got to be the biggest scam ever." And I said, "Bob, it's not even close." He said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "The fact that they can print money out of nothing and control the money supply and the currency, that's a far bigger scam." And he said, "Yeah, you're right." And I said, "But it's not the biggest scam." And he said, "What?" And I said, "The anti-human scam is the biggest scam. This whole stack of bullshit is based on what the UN has been pushing since 1960 with the Club of Rome, which is an affiliated organization, saying that basically humans are greedy, rapacious, uncaring, irresponsible, unkind. They just don't give a damn. And we have got to save you from you, Adrian. We have got to save you from humanity." And when you think about it, you think, hang on. You, the globalists, you're humans. Mm-hmm. I thought all humans were greedy, rapacious, uncaring, irresponsible. Oh, no, that doesn't apply to us. But my point is, you would not be here except for one thing. Someone took care of you. Now, I don't know your background. Not everyone has a parent who sticks around. So, but the fact is that if a parent abandons me or you, someone else has stepped in, because I am living proof. You are living proof that someone cared for you. When a horse or a dog gives birth to an offspring, a foal pops out, hits the ground, and in about 20 minutes, it's standing on spindly, shaky feet, and within half an hour, it's trotting, and it sidles up to its mum and starts suckling on its mum's tits. Now, what happens then is that after about 3 months, that foal starts to eat grass, and then it's just with the herd. That's it. That's it. 3 months. And to still get some nurturing, but a human baby is born completely helpless and is helpless for quite a few years, and so there's a fundamental trait in humans that is about care. And if your parents or your whoever took care of you does a good job at caring for you, then you get to survive, and their genes get passed on. We now have that caring gene. It's not a caring gene, but you know what I'm getting at. That caring
Yeah.
trait is endemic in humans. It's what enables us to survive. Care is absolutely essential, and it's human. Sure, other animals nurture their young, but they don't have the same kind of care.
Mm.
The other thing is that we have got an enormous capacity for love and true love. Other animals don't have that capacity for love. They have nurturing, but they don't have the love. The third thing we've got is we've got an enormous ability to use our reasoning, our mental capacity. You know, you're pretty fit, but even Arnold Schwarzenegger at his prime was a monster.
Mm-hmm.
You know, very, very strong. A tiger would have made mincemeat of him literally in seconds. Arnold Schwarzenegger cannot stand up to a tiger. You cannot stand up to a tiger, no matter how fit you get.
Mm-hmm.
But if you, as our ancestors did, start working together using our rational mind, our intellect, using our language, we're the only ones capable of language. Well, maybe dolphins in a minimal amount, and whales. But if you use your language and your teamwork and your social skills, then you and I can form a group of, say, 10 males to protect our families. And that's how we survived despite our puniness and lack of strength. So that's how we survived. And what happened back with our ancestors, if I was on sentry duty and I fell asleep, I'd get ostracized from the family, ostracized from the clan, from the tribe.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be dead. So that means the sense of belonging was extremely important, and that's what humans use that sense of belonging to stay in social groups. And what the UN does, what tyrants have done throughout, is to make you feel alone and vulnerable, so that you don't dare sacrifice that sense of belonging and speak up and be independent. You follow the herd. That's what they've done. So we've got to recognize that there's also something else that works against love, reasoning, and care, and that's the human ego. So we all have the battle between. There's not a battle between left and right. That's bullshit. That's a facade. What the real battle is between control and freedom. And the left wing side of politics is basically about control, and the right wing is basically about freedom. So
Yeah.
you have this control battle going on. That battle between control and freedom is within each of us, Adrian. You know that. It's between us, any two people. It's between groups. It's between nations. That's what causes war. It's within the whole of humanity. But you know, there are very significant ways, proven ways, of getting around that battle and getting back to our free, real self.
Well,
And
we can
that's
see
another
that at
thing
the moment,
that the
Malcolm. I
UN is
think
doing.
like the division that's happening at the moment is, I think it's ramping up, and I think for good reason, because it takes away the
And
limelight from.
excuse me, Adrian.
Yeah,
They showed that during COVID, but they also showed during COVID, they put out the bullshit that said, "You're on your own, mate.
of
You're on
course.
your own, and only you think this." And so most people just withdrew and followed the herd, but you and I
Absolutely.
didn't.
Yeah, look, I agree. And I think, I know you said like a ways back that a lot of people aren't waking up, but I do feel that there is some sort of shift that is
Yes.
only recent in my mind that is occurring. And so, my thought process is that I'm trying to deter people from saying the problem is religion. The problem is Israel. The problem is the Jews. The problem is these migrants. Like, I understand that they have certain nuances and components of and layers of those particular areas that can add to um I guess the discourse that we have in the world at the moment, and they can be mitigated. However, I still circle back to the main purveyors of how your life is being run at the moment, and the information that you're receiving, and the the decisions that you're making based on that information is from the government and from the media. But also, I wanted to ask you, because you've mentioned, the UN, you mentioned the WEF, you mentioned the WHO, you've mentioned all of these other agencies which have a stronghold. They have a stranglehold on our government. Like you mentioned before, there's a lot of good people in the government. They're just doing what they know best. I don't know if it's willful ignorance, or if it's legitimately a compromise. It's someone from the higher ups that are saying, if you don't sprout this information, if you don't toe the line on this particular subject, like climate and all the rest of it, well, then, there's going to be consequences. And I see either Liberal or Labor government towing the line. I see them spineless. I don't see anyone with real leadership qualities, and I don't see anyone in those parties doing anything other than what they're told to do. So, like in your mind, like who at that upper echelon of governmental control and decision making, who's compromised there? Who's being told what to do and is just absolutely towing the line? I'm not sure what to make of it, but it doesn't seem like someone with any backbone or nous about how to solve this country's problems is really doing anything in a proactive nature. I think they're just sprouting the same rhetoric and bullshit that every other nation that's controlled by these three-letter agencies are doing.
You're right to a large extent, Adrian. And I'm going to have to get going pretty soon.
Sure.
There's so many things. It doesn't matter if you've been fooled or not as a member of parliament. It is up to you to get the truth. There's not an excuse. Some of it is willful blindness. They don't want to look for the truth. If you're not going to pick up a rock in your garden because there may be a scorpion in it, well, you can't see the scorpion, so you don't do anything about it. But it could bite your kids, could sting your kids. So it's still up to you to pick up that rock just in case there's a scorpion under it, if you know what I mean. So there are a lot of willfully blind people in Parliament. The majority of people in Parliament, and I say this based on my own experience, are decent people who've gone into Parliament because they care. But they're soon indoctrinated, they're soon controlled. So there's one obvious coercion going on, and that is that it's particularly in the Labor Party. If you don't vote if you don't vote with the party, we'll not pre-select you next time. So if you want to keep your cushy job in the Senate and do bugger all, just make sure you vote with us. Don't think, do not look for the facts. Don't think, just vote. The majority of Liberals, for example, don't know about Agenda 21, but it's real. There's a very good senator. He's not there anymore, but he retired. He spoke in favor of the UN Agenda 21 back in 1996. It started in 1992. Back in 1996, 1998, at a conference in Logan. He believed the crap because it's wrapped up in lovely words. Matt Canavan, he's a really nice guy, a strong Catholic. He's very engaging, very intelligent. He realized that the climate scam was a scam, and he was a strong climate skeptic. When it came to becoming a minister, he suddenly became a climate alarmist and said we need to cut our carbon dioxide from human activity. And I said to him, Matt, why are you saying that? It's bullshit. And he said, well, we produce so much carbon dioxide as humans, we must be affecting. We produce a trivial amount compared to nature, and we're not having an effect. The data says that. And I said, where's your evidence, Matt? And he just slid away from me. Now, with the pressure that we've been putting on the National Party and the Liberal Party politically, Matt has now slid back from being a climate alarmist back to being a skeptic. So when you see people like Matt Canavan changing without any change in the science, when you see Scott Morrison, who is Liberal Prime Minister, promise in 2019 that he would not introduce net zero, and 18 months later go to a global conference in Glasgow, come back from the UN's conference and implement implement net zero, you know there's something wrong. These people are telling lies. They are fraudulent. Then they're getting enormous benefit from it just by political benefit. So the problem is me. The problem, each parliamentarian, each citizen should be saying, what is the problem? The problem is me. In the case of citizens, including me and you, we need to start waking up and spreading the news, sharing the news. In the case of MPs, they need to start standing up and representing their people. The next thing you mentioned was other groups. I don't think you mentioned the International Monetary Fund, the IMF as itself, but there are many organizations, the World Bank, the IMF, UNESCO, they're all pushing this fraud, and they're part of the global agenda. And many people don't see that, but it's real. The Federal Reserve Bank is a privately owned entity controlled by banking families. Now, one of the best ever American senators and best ever American congressman is Ron Paul, or was Ron Paul. He said in a very short book, very simple book, very easy to read book called End the Fed, the Federal Reserve Bank, End the Fed, that every major war since 1913 and the creation of the Fed is directly attributable to Fed policies.
Wow.
The banks make money off both sides of each war. So when you look at Ukraine, when you look at Israel, then that gives you some of the idea of what's going on. The second thing that he said in that book that I remember was that every major recession in the world since 1913, every major depression has been directly attributable to the policies of the Federal Reserve Bank, which is run by banks for banks, not run by the American president. So the problem is me. We've got to sort this out. You mentioned the Jewish people. I think the Jewish people are fine. They're fabulous people. The Jews I know are wonderful, wonderful people, very bright, very engaging. Most Palestinians, I'll bet, are pretty decent people. Most Palestinians detest Hamas. They're being slaughtered, human shields by Hamas, and a lot of Jewish people in Israel do not like the Jewish government, do not like the government, Netanyahu's government. They oppose it. There's a lot of dissent within Israel, but I don't know the facts behind. I do know that it's a very complex history in the Middle East. And I don't know the truth. One of the first casualties of war is the truth. So I'm not going to take sides with Israel or the Palestinians, but I will take sides against terrorists. Hamas is a bloodthirsty terrorist organization. When I look at the Ukraine war, I see Putin as standing up to the globalists and earning my respect for doing so. He knows what's going on in Ukraine, and it's a war against the globalists. So the globalists are entrenched in Ukraine, and the Russia was controlled by the globalists, no longer. The United States is controlled heavily by the globalists. So I have enormous respect for America. I'm married to an American. Both our children are dual American Australian citizens. I've visited every state of the United States, all 50. I've worked and lived in the States for 5 years, traveled across the States. I love America. I love Americans. But I absolutely detest, until Trump came along, I absolutely detest the American government in the last few decades. Since Reagan, they've been globalists pushing a global agenda. And the Americans are being controlled by the globalists, and more Americans are waking up. So really, with the things we're saying, the March for Australia, people are waking up here in those marches. And strictly speaking, it looks like they're opposing mass migration. They are. They're opposing the homelessness. They are. But when you see the flags, I've never seen that when Pauline and I and Tyron Whitten from Western Australia, the senator, One Nation senator in Western Australia, attended the Canberra rally and led the march up the Commonwealth Avenue. We could feel it. It was wonderful. They weren't just concerned about housing. They weren't just concerned about immigration. They were very, very concerned about the loss of the Australian identity. And that has been deliberate. There's something missing. When you look at human civilization, it's structured on two main organizations, the family and the nation state. And that's wonderful. And what the United Nations has been doing to put in place an unelected socialist global governance is destroy the nation state, destroy borders. That's why mass immigration is flooding across borders in Europe. That's why only a few, like people like the leader of Poland, like the leader of Hungary, are standing up and saying, our borders are shut. We need to do the same here. John Howard got a lot of political credibility mileage when he stopped the boats. They were just a few thousand people. He was bringing them in by the hundreds of thousands on the bloody airlines, facilitating that. That was destroying. John Howard the Liberal Nationals started mass immigration. But what's one of the aims of mass immigration is to destroy the national identity. When you destroy the national identity, you destroy what people are living for. and identifying with. So a big part, and I'd say a lot of Australians didn't know this, but it's wonderful that it's coming into their consciousness, in their gut and in their heart, that my country's at stake here. My country's being changed. My country's being destroyed. And when you destroy, when we destroy, okay, you've been overseas, Adrian?
Yeah.
Okay, when you go overseas, when you introduce yourself, what do you say? I'll guarantee you say this: I'm Adrian Demico, and I'm Australian.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Yeah.
Yep. Your nationality, regardless of where you are, is part of your identity. When they destroy your nationality, because they're destroying Australia, they're destroying your identity. If you look at the countries that have the tightest immigration policies, they're countries like Switzerland, but look at the 5 near us: Japan, Taiwan, Singapore, South Korea, China, all Asian. Are they against Caucasians, against white people? No, they're not. They trade with us. But and they respect us. But they know they don't want Islamic extremists in. They don't want too many people from any other culture, because they want to preserve in Japan what it means to be Japanese. They want to preserve in Taiwan what it means to be Taiwanese. They want to preserve in Korea what it means to be South Korean. That national identity is hugely important for productivity, safety, security, risk, you name it, national identity. And that's why the United Nations, the guy who fabricated global warming and then climate change was Maurice Strong. He was a senior bureaucrat, an absolute criminal. And I can go into the details on that. He concocted global warming so that he could make billions of dollars. He was literally one of the founding directors of the Chicago Climate Exchange to exchange and trade carbon dioxide credits. The man was a bloody crook. Al Gore the same. So Maurice Strong, the founder of global warming, the fraud of global warming, said that he had 2 aims with his life: to put in place an unelected socialist global government, which many people have said in the senior levels of the UN. They've said it publicly, which the World Economic Forum has said publicly. And the second aim he had, now imagine this: deindustrialize Western civilization. Deindustrialize Western civilization. When the cops wanted him for crimes in Western United States, he fled the United States. He's a Canadian. He fled the United States and exiled himself in China. And who's benefiting the most from this solar and wind transition? The Chinese. And what fuel are they using? Nuclear, hydro, and coal. But they're making money sending wind turbines and solar panels subsidized by us overseas, and we're destroying our electricity sector, raising the cost of electricity, which is the number 1 cost component of manufacturing. And where's our manufacturing going? Where's the jobs going? To China. To China are making a shitload of money out of this at our expense, and we're destroying our sector. This is how mad it's become. This is how absolutely mad it's become. So this is extremely important. These marches around the country, extremely important, because it's about our national identity. It's about our personal identity.
Agreed. Yeah, look, there's definitely an attack on the heart and soul of Australia. I think I've always loved Australia. I've always loved living here. I've been around the world a couple of times, and I keep telling people that, if you go to any of our local beaches down here and close your eyes, you could be and open them back up again. You could be anywhere in the world. They're that beautiful, and our place is something that needs to be cherished and needs to be brought back. I know
and Adrian, you know of Fernando, Rukshan Fernando?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Okay.
know.
Rukshan Fernando, I've got pale skin. I get sunburned here. I haven't got the right skin for this country. But Rukshan is black. He's a lovely guy. He's got red blood, just like you and me. He's got red blood. He's a human, and I value him enormously. I respect him, admire him. I respect his integrity and his courage standing up during the COVID mismanagement. Rukshan Fernando, I was born in India. Okay, so I grew up with Muslims, Jews, Hindu, Buddhists, Christians, Sikhs, you name it, they're there in India. Right. And not just a few, but millions of each of them. So I grew up with them. I spent my formative years, the first 6 years of my life, with Indians of all religions. Now, Rukshan was born in Sri Lanka, and he came to this country several years ago. And just recently, he made a video, about 12 months ago, he made a video. So here's this black man standing up saying, I came here because I valued the Australian culture. I wanted what was in Australia. And he said, bugger me, they've let in so many Indians and so many Chinese that it's destroying our culture.
Yeah.
Now, I've got nothing against the Chinese. I lived with Indians. I respect them, love them. But when you get too many of so many different cultures, it destroys the Australian culture that people came here for.
Sure.
And then we bring in Muslim extremists, Islamic extremists that are telling us they want to kill us.
Mm.
You shouldn't be doing that. This is insane. So I'm opposed to mass migration. I'm opposed to low standards of immigration. We used to bring in people from other countries who came here and contributed immediately. Economically, they contributed. They raised the productivity of our country. That's not happening. We're bringing in bludgers and parasites. Sure, some. I'm not saying all immigrants are bad. Not at any means. I'm an immigrant, but the point is that we've got to raise our standards and cut mass migration, stop mass migration, and we've got to deport about 100,000 people who are here illegally. That's a start. We've got to remigrate people who don't belong here, and we've got to stop this mass student influx that's destroying our housing and our rental markets. So we've got to look after the people of Australia. Immigration policies, number one, should be to look after the people of Australia. You bring in people who can contribute immediately instead of being parasites.
Agreed. Malcolm, have you got enough time to talk about the compensation or anything to do with the COVID jabs, business closures? Is there anything you can touch on with that, or do you want to come back another time and talk about that?
I'll come back another time, but I'm happy to talk about it right now, just briefly, just to
Mm.
reassure you. I was the first to come out against the COVID insanity, the COVID injections, and we'll talk more about that in detail next time. We have not given up. We are still pursuing the bastards. I'll make it very, very clear my stance on COVID. It was homicidal. COVID was a low severity virus, a very low severity virus, much less severe than some past flus. In Queensland and New South Wales, two of the states in the world unique in that we got the COVID injections before we got COVID. So you cannot attribute the massive deaths in Queensland and New South Wales, many of which went unreported, to COVID. They're attributable directly to the COVID injections, which were never tested properly, never tested fully. I asked the Therapeutic Goods Administration, I asked the Chief Medical Officer what the severity and transmissibility of COVID was. We can talk more about it in detail. In March of 2021, in Senate estimates, they said to me, and they gave me a graph showing it, that the severity was low to moderate. If you then take out the people who are highly vulnerable and who have a compromised immune system, it means that for you and me, the COVID severity was low. And they turned our bloody country upside down and destroyed it, trying to control people.
Yeah, for a
The
flu.
second thing is that I asked the Therapeutic Goods Administration in March of 2023, I think it was, what testing they did, because the government said it's all been fully tested. Well, here's what the head of the Therapeutic Goods Administration, who approved the COVID injections and turned a blind eye to the mandates, they said they didn't test the COVID injections because they relied upon the Food and Drug Administration in America that approved them. At the time, Adrian, they knew that the Food and Drug Administration had already said previously that they didn't do any testing on it. They relied upon Pfizer. And Pfizer killed 1,200 people in its initial trials. And at the end of that, once they got that many deaths, they shut down the trial. That bloody insidious anti-human toxic injection, gene therapy-based treatment, has never been fully tested. And the testing, that limited testing they did do, showed it as a killer. What we've got now is in real time, we've got people who are clearly victims of the deaths due to the COVID injections. That is homicide. And you look at it at the scale, it is homicide. But to answer your question, we're still pursuing compensation. And it's lip service, the compensation scheme they've got at the moment. We're still pursuing accountability, and we will keep going until we get it. We have not given up on COVID. Every Senate estimates, I ask more questions. In the Senate, I ask questions about that. Pauline and I are one of the few that are continuing with it, but we intend to get to the bottom of it. So I'm happy to talk about that in more depth later. But It was driven by enormous lies. I better stop.
I know.
Enormous lies.
Makes your blood pressure go up. Mate, again, it's just such a great chat with you. I think there's a wealth of knowledge that people can can extrapolate from all of this, and also some hope and understanding that we do have some power and control over our futures and our destinies, and also the future of
Yeah.
this country and how well we live in it. So I appreciate you, mate. I really do. Yeah, hopefully next time we can get together in person. If you're ever down in Canberra, if there's a march that way, I'll come down and walk beside you. I think it'd be a great day.
Yeah, I'd say so too. Happy to do that, Adrian, and you're welcome. Remember that every citizen in Australia needs to say, under our constitution, which is the people's constitution, the people have the most power. The problem is me. The problem is we, the citizen. The solution is we, the citizen. So, so keep doing what you're doing. We've got to have the independent media out there pushing the people's position.
Thank you, mate. We'll do. Well, until we talk or meet again, I'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right, mate. Look
All right.
after yourself.
See you, buddy.
Thanks, Adrian.